I never imagined my 22nd birthday would mark the unraveling of everything I once called home. It began with a single message from my father that splintered my world. Sold your laptop. Madison needs a phone. Be grateful there's food on the table. Then, as if that wasn't jarring enough, another text followed moments later. You'll also cover her tuition. $6,000. Due by Friday. My reply was immediate, absolutely not. What came next was even colder. Then pack up. You're on your own. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I just walked away. They woke the next day to what I'd left behind on the kitchen table, something they never expected. Now, my sister's frantic and my mother's shouting. But before I take you to that moment, tell me where you're tuning in from in the comments. If you've ever dealt with unfair treatment or stood up for yourself, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of grit and growth. Let me take you back to the beginning. My name's Brooke Wilson. Until that day, I was just a senior. In college, balancing 2 jobs while scraping together a future. I'd spent over a year stashing away tips from waitressing shifts to buy a MacBook Pro, the same one now gone without a trace. That machine held everything: job applications, senior thesis drafts, years of memories. My parents had insisted I stay at home to save costs, but in reality, it felt like a leash dressed up as a favor. That morning began like any other. I got up early, threw on my uniform, and headed downstairs. My mother, Karen, was by the coffee pot, barely glancing at me. Happy birthday, Brooke, she muttered without lifting her eyes from her phone. Thanks, I said quietly, hoping for something more, a card, a slice of cake, anything. Instead, she sipped her latte and added, You're still taking Madison to Brianna's, right? Of course. Madison always came first. That laptop, my prized possession, sat on the kitchen counter. I slipped it into my bag, careful as ever. I wasn't about to let anyone touch it. Or so I thought. Birthdays in our household always came second to Madison's whims. At 16, my tiny celebration got cancelled so she could compete in a last-minute soccer tournament. At 18, the money my grandparents gifted me for graduation mysteriously disappeared. Later, I learned it went toward Madison's car deposit. By 21, I stopped expecting candles altogether. At least work felt different. The Sunrise Diner buzzed with regulars and the clang of breakfast orders, but my coworkers hadn't forgotten. Tammy brought homemade cupcakes, and my manager, Richard Lawson, surprised me with a gift card to the local bookshop. You're one of the best we've got, he said with a smile that reached his eyes. We see the effort. That simple gesture hit deeper than it should have. During my mid-shift break, I stepped outside with a steaming coffee and checked my phone. My father, Frank, had messaged. The words nearly knocked the breath out of me. Sold your laptop. Madison needed a new phone. I blinked at the screen, disbelief sinking in. I tried calling. He ignored it. Then another buzz. You'll cover her school bill too. $6,000. Friday deadline. Everything stopped. That MacBook wasn't just a computer. It was my lifeline. Every assignment, resume, portfolio file, it was mine. Bought with hours of work they never helped with. And now, gone. All for my sister. Again. I typed one word through blurred vision. No, get out. We're done helping you. That was his reply. On the day I was supposed to celebrate, I was disowned, punished. For refusing to fund Madison's 4th college attempt. She'd flunked out 3 times before, always distracted by weekend benders and midweek parties. But somehow, I was expected to carry her failures. I finished the shift in a daze, my motions robotic. I dropped plates, poured coffee, nodded through conversations. Nobody noticed the storm inside me. What now? Where would I go? What about my other belongings? My classes, Richard approached as I handed in my apron. You alright, Brooke? You seem distant. I faked a laugh. Just some family stuff. Nothing I can't handle. That was a lie. I was drowning. I drove through the city on autopilot, tears sliding down my cheeks, until I reached Olivia Martinez's apartment. Olivia, my best friend, my anchor, opened the door and took one look at me. What did they do now? She asked, wrapping me in a hug. I showed her everything, the messages, the betrayal. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. He sold your laptop? The one you saved for all year. Olivia was fuming. And now tuition for her? She scoffed. That's insane. I nodded, eyes red. They've always chosen her. But this time, it's gone too far. We sipped tea as I spilled everything, every moment of being overlooked, dismissed, erased. I reminded her of my high school graduation. Olivia winced. That day, I'd earned a major scholarship. But before I could step on stage, my mother waved me down, excited over a text. Madison had made JV cheer captain. My victory vanished in her excitement. Remember my internship with Thompson Marketing? I added. They skipped the reception because Madison had a prom hair appointment. Olivia clenched her jaw. Yeah. I remember all of it. I've never understood how they justify treating you so unfairly, Olivia said, her voice tinged with frustration. It wasn't just the major events that exposed the disparity, it was the relentless, everyday infringements. My belongings had always been viewed as community property, especially by Madison. Shirts would vanish, only to reappear wrinkled and stained. Academic books I bought with my own money would end up dog-eared and coffee-streaked beneath her bed. The camera my grandmother gave me, one of my most prized possessions, was returned with a shattered lens after Madison took it on a weekend trip without asking. I've juggled 2 part-time jobs every semester to stay afloat, Liv. 2 jobs, I said, pacing. And she's failed out of how many programs? 3? Because she's out every weekend partying. She wrecked her 3rd car last month, number 3, and instead of consequences, they reward her with a new phone. And now I'm supposed to bail her out again with another round of tuition. My chest ached from the tension. Olivia's eyes went wide. Wait, your thesis. Wasn't all your research on that laptop? That reminder knocked the wind out of me. Every single thing I'd worked on for my final semester was gone. Everything, I whispered, sinking into the couch. My thesis. My portfolio. Job applications. Letters of recommendation. For years of blood, sweat, and sleepless nights, all gone. I buried my face in my hands, barely able to breathe. You're staying here, Olivia said, placing a steady hand on my shoulder. No arguments. Teresa's with her family for a couple of weeks anyway. The couch pulls out, and you're welcome for as long as you need. I nodded weakly, trying to muster gratitude through the haze of shock. Then an idea sparked. I should call Aunt Diane. Your dad's sister, right? The one who sent you that care package last year? Yes. She's always treated me with compassion. If anyone would understand, it's her. She picked up on the 2nd ring. Brooke, happy birthday, sweetheart. Her warmth cracked the icy numbness in my chest. At least one person remembered, I managed. As I explained the situation, her end of the line went quiet except for a long, deep sigh. Your father's always put Madison first, Aunt Diane said quietly. Even your grandparents tried to reason with him, but he wouldn't hear it. But this? Selling your property and demanding you foot Madison's college bill? That crosses a line. They've kicked me out, I confessed. And I don't even know where to begin. This has been building for years, Brooke. Maybe it's time to stop letting them walk all over you. After we hung up, Olivia and I regrouped in her kitchen. Tea in hand, we began forming a plan. You need to go back tonight, Olivia said firmly. Grab your stuff. And while you're there, document everything. I'm not just picking up my things, I replied. The idea had taken root and was growing by the second. I'm going to leave them something. Something that forces them to look in the mirror. Are you absolutely sure about this? Olivia asked cautiously. It might torch whatever's left of your relationship with them. I pictured my laptop being sold behind my back. The stolen money. The years of invisibility. Some ties are better severed, I said. It's time they realize I'm not their scapegoat anymore. Close to midnight, I parked in front of the house. The porch light was off, but a soft glow poured from Madison's bedroom window. I entered quietly, using my key for what would be the final time. The silence inside felt different now, final, like a closed chapter. My heart raced as I climbed the stairs. But my room wasn't empty. The door stood slightly ajar, light spilling into the hallway. I pushed it open and froze. I barely had time to breathe before the next wave arrived, this time from my father. You ungrateful brat. After all we've sacrificed for you, this is how you repay us? That folder is a gross distortion, and you know it. If you go through with this stunt, you'll regret it. The threat was veiled but unmistakable. Then, just hours later, his anger gave way to desperation. Brooke, let's discuss this calmly. We can figure something out. Maybe we can negotiate about the laptop. Please, just call me. But the message that truly made my stomach twist came from someone I never expected, my grandmother, Eleanor. Brooke, darling, it's Grandma. I just spoke to your father, Anne. I'm speechless. I never imagined it was this serious. Your grandfather and I are flying out first thing in the morning. Don't respond to your parents. Not until we've spoken. Call me as soon as you can. I stared at the phone. Grandma Eleanor is angry? Olivia blinked, shocked as I replayed the voicemail aloud. She's always avoided family drama, I said quietly, trying to process it. She's the one who usually brushes things under the rug. Maybe this time, there's no rug big enough, Olivia murmured. I shut the phone off again. The emotional onslaught was too much. For the first time in my life, I had laid everything bare. And I wasn't going to back down. That afternoon, Richard, my manager from the diner, called Olivia's landline. He'd noticed my absence. I heard from Olivia, he said gently. Take the day off. Come back tomorrow. I'll schedule some extra shifts for you and even give you a paycheck advance if needed. His offer brought tears to my eyes. Thank you, I whispered, my throat tight. Support came in like waves after that. Friends trickled into Olivia's apartment, arms full of supplies and kindness. Jessica brought her backup laptop. Nathan, a tech-savvy friend from school, volunteered to retrieve any data from my cloud backups. Melissa arrived with armfuls of groceries and tubs of homemade soup. We're not your blood, but we're your family too, Melissa said, wrapping me in a hug. For the first time in days, I felt warmth that wasn't tied to guilt, obligation, or manipulation. Just before sunset, Aunt Diane arrived, her eyes sharp with purpose. I went to your parents' house, she said as soon as she entered. It's a disaster zone. Frank is pacing and shouting. Karen is dialing everyone she knows, asking for loans. And Madison, well, she's unraveling. What happened to her? I asked, confused. She's just found out the truth, about the money, the lies. Turns out having your entire worldview implode is tough, Diane said dryly. But that's not why I'm here. She placed a manila folder on Olivia's coffee table and looked me dead in the eye. Your tuition? It was paid weeks ago. Out of the trust fund your grandfather created for you and Madison. I blinked. What trust fund? That's the problem. Diane sighed. He set up equal funds for both of you at birth. You should have had access at 18, but Frank convinced the trustees you weren't mature enough to handle your own finances. It was like the air was sucked out of the room. There's money for school? There's money that belongs to you, she confirmed. Enough to finish undergrad, even grad school. And whatever's left would be released when you turn 25. But Dad told me I needed loans. That we couldn't afford tuition. I've been working myself into the ground to stay out of debt. He's been funneling your fund into Madison's disasters, Diane said, her voice brittle with fury. After she blew through her share, he started draining yours to patch the holes she left behind. The betrayal made my skin crawl. My years of stress and sacrifice hadn't been necessary. They'd been orchestrated. Controlled. Can this be undone? I asked. Diane's eyes flared with something fierce. Your grandmother's already bringing the family attorney. She wants a full forensic audit. Your father's reign is over. She squeezed my hand and promised to return the next day with Eleanor. After she left, I sank into the couch, my thoughts racing. It was bigger than I imagined. Not just injustice, it was fraud. A lifetime of manipulation, unraveling at last. Olivia sat beside me, quiet. What now? She asked. I stared ahead. Now? Now I keep going. That folder was just the first page. The rest of the story is about to unfold. 1 week after my birthday, I moved into Aunt Diane's guest room. She insisted I take the space, even though Olivia offered to let me stay longer. It was peaceful there, far from the chaos that had consumed me for so long. Tyler, Diane's college-aged son, filled me in on what was happening behind the scenes. It's like reality TV, he said, lounging on the living room sofa. Uncle Frank is spinning stories, but nobody's buying them. According to Tyler, the folder had detonated a powder keg of family secrets. Madison, for all her faults, had lost it when she discovered the truth. She believed the lie that I was stingy, that she was struggling while I lived selfishly. She found out your trust was used to pay off household bills and her tuition after she tanked her own fund, Tyler said. She's mad at them. And confused. Has she reached out? I asked cautiously. Tyler shook his head. Not directly. But Grandma says she's been asking where you are, how you're doing. I think she's processing. Meanwhile, Karen was calling anyone with a phone number, pretending I'd run away and was destitute. But her lies quickly unraveled as different relatives compared notes. The real shock came when Grandma Eleanor walked into their house, lawyer in tow, and demanded a full financial report. She's not playing, Tyler said. Told Frank. She's stripping him of all trustee privileges and will sue if he doesn't cooperate. For the first time in my life, the people who had always been shielded by excuses were finally being held accountable, and this time, I wasn't alone. Years of enduring silent inequality had left cracks in the foundation of our family image, and now those cracks were finally visible to others. Relatives who'd watched favoritism play out year after year were no longer pretending not to notice. Whispers turned into support. The doorbell chimed mid-afternoon. Tyler peeked out from behind the curtain. It's Madison, he announced, eyebrows raised. My heart skipped, unsure whether I was ready for what was coming. But I nodded. Let her in. She entered timidly, not the self-assured sibling I'd grown up with. She clutched her handbag like it was armor, glancing around Diane's foyer as if it might swallow her whole. Can we talk? Her voice was barely above a whisper. I nodded again and guided her to the kitchen, where we sat on opposite sides of the table. The silence between us stretched tight until she broke it. I didn't know, she began. I didn't know any of it. What didn't you know? I asked, voice measured, that you were covering the bills. That they took from your account without asking. That your laptop wasn't just taken, it was sold. Her hands trembled slightly. That they drained your trust to fund mine, after I blew through mine. I scanned her expression. There was no performance, just disorientation and shame. They always said you didn't mind, she continued. That you volunteered. They made you sound like this noble martyr who enjoyed picking up the slack. I leaned back, arms crossed. They told me it was my obligation. That being older meant I should know better. Meanwhile, you were protected from everything: finances, responsibilities, consequences. Madison flinched. I get it. It looks like I was pampered and selfish. And maybe I was. But they lied to me too. I didn't know I was being supported by you. I studied her again, this time seeing a sister who might also be a casualty of manipulation. Where I had been drained of resources, she had been denied growth. Why did you flunk out so many times? I asked, sharper than I meant to be. She blinked, startled. Because I hated the majors they forced me into. Business, pre-law, accounting. All chosen by Dad. I didn't want any of them. What did you want? To be a teacher, she admitted, voice cracking. Elementary school. But Dad said it wasn't worth investing in. A pang of unexpected sympathy hit me. For years I'd thought her failures came from laziness. But maybe her dreams had been dismissed just like mine. Why are you here? I asked softly. Madison pulled an envelope from her bag and slid it across the table. To say sorry. And to give this back. Inside was $800 in cash, for the phone, she explained. I didn't know Dad got the money by selling your laptop. I thought, she trailed off, what did you think? That it was a gift. A reward for my midterm grades. That's what they told me. I didn't know it cost you something. Before I could respond, the sound of screeching tires cut through the moment. I looked out the window and froze. Our parents' car was in Diane's driveway. They followed me, Madison whispered, alarmed. I didn't tell them I was coming. Heavy knocks pounded the door. Brooke, open up. Come out now. Madison paled. I didn't tell them, she repeated, voice shaking. You don't have to see them, I said, calm settling over me. If they refuse to leave, we can call the authorities. The police, she echoed, wide-eyed. They have no right to storm someone else's home demanding access. We're adults. If Diane doesn't want them here, that's trespassing. As if summoned by the tension, Aunt Diane returned from the store. Her face hardened as she took in the shouting. I've got this, she said, placing the bags down and walking to the door. Though I couldn't hear the words exchanged, Diane's body language spoke volumes, stern, unshaken. When my father's voice escalated, she raised her phone and dialed. Minutes later, flashing lights approached. A squad car rolled to a stop. The officer exchanged a few clipped sentences with my parents. Then, reluctantly, they returned to their vehicle. As Frank slammed the car door, he shouted one last thing toward the house. This isn't over, Brooke. He was right. It wasn't, but not for the reason he thought. As they pulled away, a black sedan took their place. A man in a tailored suit exited, carrying a slim briefcase. Grandma's attorney, Madison said, recognizing him instantly. He handed Diane an envelope. Official court notice for Brooke Wilson, he announced. I opened it carefully. Inside was a summons. An emergency hearing had been scheduled. The matter of the trust funds would be reviewed before a judge. My presence was required. So were my parents. The tension that had been tightening around my chest finally loosened. This wasn't just emotional upheaval. This was legal reckoning. I glanced at Madison, who was staring at the paperwork with a strange blend of dread and relief. Maybe this fallout was necessary, and maybe, just maybe, something stronger could grow. In its place, we have a part-time opening for a marketing assistant, Allison Mercer told me during the interview, her polished voice calm and confident. It can transition into a full-time role once you graduate. Hours are flexible, and we can work around your course load. When she mentioned the salary, nearly double what I'd earned at the diner with fewer shifts, I accepted immediately. With my financial footing beginning to stabilize, I turned my focus toward healing the emotional wounds I hadn't yet acknowledged. Dr. Vanessa Torres, a therapist who specialized in toxic family dynamics, helped unravel the painful web of patterns I had lived in for years. What you're describing, she said gently in our first session, is a classic dynamic of golden child versus scapegoat. One sibling idealized, the other burdened with responsibility. But why did they split us like that? I asked. The question that had haunted me since childhood. Often, these roles reflect the parent's unresolved pain, she explained. It was never really about you or Madison, it was about what your parents needed you to represent. You were the reliable one. The one they could lean on. Madison was the one they could project their dreams onto. Understanding that didn't erase the hurt, but it helped reframe my self-worth. I wasn't deficient. I was just caught in a story written by people who never asked me what role I wanted to play. In an unexpected twist, Madison became a source of healing rather than pain. She began visiting regularly, each time arriving with more pieces of our family's hidden history. One afternoon, she slumped onto my couch and said, "Did you know they've been drowning in debt for years?" I blinked. That would explain why they were always raiding my account. "Dad made awful investments," she said, her voice low. "They used both of our trusts to cover the losses." More of the puzzle came together. The missing birthday money. The fake urgency behind their family emergencies. Everything had a reason, and it had nothing to do with love. Madison leaned forward, whispering like we were teenagers conspiring after curfew. "They played us, Brooke. I found emails, actual conversations, where they planned how to keep us from comparing notes. They wanted to keep us divided so we wouldn't figure it out." My throat tightened. It was betrayal layered over betrayal. But hearing it from her somehow made it bearable. "So? What now?" I asked. "I'm reapplying to school," she said, her eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in a long time: purpose. Elementary education. What I actually want to do. Grandma's helping me sort the finances. It was strange to see her like this. Centered. Determined. Not guided by our parents' expectations, but by her own. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe we might someday be real sisters, not rivals in a rigged game, but equals on our own terms. My own life began to stabilize further when grandmother Eleanor offered me an apartment in a downtown building she owned. "Family discount," she insisted, "but you'll still pay rent. Independence is important." The location couldn't have been better, walking distance from campus and my new job. On my first day moving in, a neighbor appeared in the hallway as I struggled with a heavy box. "Need a hand?" he asked, his smile disarming. "I'm Ethan. Welcome to the building." He was a freelance graphic designer who worked from home, and before long, we exchanged numbers. "Just in case," he'd said. "Or if you need recommendations for good pizza." That night, we started texting. Favorite authors turned into movie reviews. Recommendations turned into inside jokes. No expectations. Just ease. 2 weeks later, a package arrived at my door. Inside was my laptop. A note from Grandma Eleanor was taped to the top. "Walter next door was horrified when he learned how your laptop was sold. I reimbursed him. He returned it without hesitation. Some people still know right from wrong." I powered it on, my hands trembling, and to my amazement, nearly all my files were intact. Thesis research. Portfolio. Photographs. Personal notes. It was like a part of me I thought was lost had found its way back, with my files recovered. I scheduled a meeting with my thesis advisor, Dr. Ingrid Hoffman. I told her a condensed version of the chaos. She didn't need details to understand. "Family emergencies happen," she said gently. "We can give you an extra month. You'll catch up. I have no doubt." Little by little, the pieces of my life fit back together. To mark this turning point, I invited those who had stood by me to a small dinner in my apartment. My first time hosting anything. I cooked simple pasta, made salad, and set the table for 6: Olivia, Aunt Diane, Madison, Grandmother Eleanor, Ethan, and me. Surrounded by those who had been my support system during the storm, I felt an unfamiliar sensation. Peace. My parents weren't there. And for once, their absence didn't sting. Grandmother Eleanor lifted her glass, her tone both proud and affectionate. "To Brooke. For finding her voice. And to new beginnings for all of us." We raised our glasses and toasted. "To new beginnings," I echoed, my voice clear and steady. Later, as candles flickered atop my birthday cake, Olivia grinned. "Make a wish." I closed my eyes. 1 year had passed since the day everything crumbled. And here I was, whole, grounded, loved. I made no wish, for once. I didn't need to, because I already had everything I used to dream about. More than anything, I had finally created something my old life never offered: a circle of people who genuinely cared for me without condition. When Richard, my former manager and now a close friend, called for a toast during the celebration, I laughed but lifted my glass. "To second chances," I said, glancing around the room filled with warmth and laughter. "And to the people who remind us what love is supposed to feel like." Tammy, now the assistant manager thanks to Richard's faith in her, gave me a proud nod from across the room. They'd both played an enormous part in my early journey toward independence, guiding me when I could barely see the road ahead, but the person I found myself watching most was Madison. Her smile, soft and sincere, held none of the performative charm she used to wear like armor. After years spent at odds, rivalry constructed and reinforced by manipulation, we were finally finding each other in truth. Madison had started her education degree and was thriving for the first time in her life. Living on campus, budgeting her own expenses, studying subjects she actually cared about, she was, in her own way, blossoming. The sister I once resented had become someone I could admire. 2 months ago, on my birthday, she had handed me an envelope. Inside was $6,000. "I want to give this to you," she said, her voice trembling. "It's not from Mom or Dad. It's from me. I've been saving everything I earn as a teaching assistant. I know this doesn't undo the past, but it's a start." It wasn't the money that brought tears to my eyes, it was the gesture. The recognition. The accountability. 6 months earlier, the legal battle had reached its conclusion. Though the terms were sealed by confidentiality, the trust funds were secured and put under independent oversight. My parents were required to make repayments and attend financial education sessions. It wasn't justice in the emotional sense, but it was structure. Consequence. And that mattered. Karen had made several emotional appeals, voicemails, birthday cards, vague apologies wrapped in nostalgic language. "I miss my girls," she'd say. "We're still family." But those messages never included the one thing I needed most: responsibility. Without that, reconciliation wasn't possible. Frank remained unyielding. "I did what I had to," he told relatives. "And she stabbed us in the back." He refused therapy, refused dialogue. In his version of events, I was still the problem. I wasn't angry anymore, I was done being angry. I'd drawn a boundary and meant it: no rebuilding without real change. In their absence, Grandmother Eleanor had stepped into a role I didn't know I needed. Weekly phone calls, monthly visits, conversations filled with family stories, gentle advice, and unwavering support. "Your grandfather would be proud of you girls," she often said. "Independent, brave, unshakably your own." Across the room, Ethan smiled at me. What had begun as neighborly help had become a steady and unexpected relationship. We'd taken our time, both cautious, both shaped by complicated histories, but slowly, something real had emerged. I remembered our first date 3 months earlier. He'd looked at me across the table and said, "From the day you moved in, I could tell you were carrying something heavy. But the way you carried it? I knew you were strong." Ethan was nothing like the people I grew up with. His kindness didn't come with conditions. His presence was steady, grounded, honest. After dessert and gifts, as the room buzzed with laughter, Eleanor pulled me aside. "This isn't a birthday present," she said, slipping an envelope into my hand. "It's part of your inheritance." Inside was the deed to a quiet mountain property that had been in our family for decades. "Your grandfather always wanted you to have this place," she said, her eyes misty. "He believed you'd make something beautiful out of it. A sanctuary. Something that belonged only to you." I hugged her tightly, the emotion catching in my throat. "Thank you," I whispered. "For everything." As the party wound down and guests drifted home, Madison stayed behind to help with dishes. "Do you ever wonder," she asked quietly, "what would have happened if Dad never sent that text last year?" I paused, considering the alternate timeline. Honestly? I probably would have kept going. Kept giving. Kept sacrificing. Until there was nothing left. Madison nodded, her voice low. "I'm sorry it had to come to that." "I'm not," I said, surprised at how sure I felt. Sometimes you have to let everything collapse before you can build something better. Later that night, I stepped onto my balcony, staring at the skyline. 1 year ago, I was living a lie built on guilt, silence, and obligation. Tonight, I stood in a home that was mine, surrounded by people who had chosen me, and whom I had chosen in return. I hadn't made a birthday wish this time. I didn't need to, because what I had now, freedom, peace, love, was already more than I'd ever thought possible. My phone buzzed. A message from Ethan: "Happy birthday again. Dinner tomorrow?" I smiled and typed back, "Absolutely. My turn to cook." To some, my story might seem like one of loss. And in a way, it was the loss of illusions, of a family I desperately wanted to believe in. But what I gained was worth far more: the chance to start over, the power to define myself, the strength to walk away from what hurt, and into something far better. What would you have done in Brooke's situation? Would you have stayed silent, or spoken your truth? Let us know in the comments, and if you've ever had to stand your ground with difficult family members, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true stories of growth, resilience, and rising from the ashes, because sometimes, the hardest endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings.